Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jewel with Jewel Books, and I am here and excited to be in conversation with Andre Jones. He is going to bring so much as an author, educator, illustrator, and we have so much to talk about today. So we're going to just jump right in there. Okay, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So I have your books here, and let me tell you, I've got notes everywhere because I had such a wonderful time reading through it, thinking about the points that you're making, the subjects that you are addressing um, in the books. So, but before we start talking about you and the books, let's talk a little bit about your background. So,
Sure.
can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, similar to Will Smith, West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground and the basketball court was where I spent most of my days. Um, yeah, the fourth of four.
Okay.
Um, Graduated from Overbrook High School in Philadelphia a year after Will Smith, actually. Um, Cheney graduate, Temple student, oh well, Temple grad school graduate
Okay.
with my MFA in playwriting. Um, Let me see what else. Mural artist. I worked for the city of Philadelphia for about 2.5 years doing murals with what was then called the Philadelphia Anti-Graffiti Network,
Okay.
which is now the Mural Arts Program.
Okay.
Um, and I got into comic books at an early age. I was 5 years old. I think I read my first Spider-Man,
Okay.
and I was hooked. Like I saw the illustrations, and I was reading, because my mom was a reading specialist, so all of us were reading by or before we were two.
Mhm.
So I'm reading this Spider-Man comic book and I'm like, man, you can get paid for creating images. And so then I started, I was already drawing. And so then, you know, I had a passion about doing the comic books and whatnot. And, but then, when I got through high school and whatnot, I went to Virginia State first. And when I was down at Virginia State, the trade-off that I had with my mom was that um, I couldn't major in graphic design. I could I could major in marketing, but I couldn't major in graphic design. And I got down there and got in those marketing classes and was like, what? So unfortunately that didn't work out and I came home, but I finished up at Cheney and I found
Let
my
me just
love of
ask you
theater.
something really quickly. Um,
Mhm.
so, as a bookseller and someone who just loves books, hearing you say like you were reading very early, and how important was that connection to books for you, and you you being allowed to fuel that passion that you had for art.
Well, so so both of my parents were educators.
Okay.
My aunts and uncles were also educators.
Okay.
My grandmother was an educator.
Okay.
And unofficially, my mother's father was an educator in his own way.
Okay.
So it was almost a demand,
Mhm.
but my mother did all of all of me and my siblings a favor because none of us were allowed to have like a television in our room or anything like that. What we had in our room was a bed
Mhm.
and a library. And
Yes.
and my mother's statement, and I quote, was, "You're either going to be well rested or well read or both." And that was it. Um, so I attributed, a lot to um that. And and I had other comic books. Like I had the classics collection. So I had um let's see, Macbeth. I had um Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I had Three Musketeers. I had Count of Monte Cristo. All of that was, in comic book form, but it didn't turn me on until I read Spider-Man.
But it was good for you to see the different ways that, a story can be expressed. So you can have this superhero story, which has so much embedded in, like, comic books have so much embedded in them. And then you have these classical, stories, you know. So wow, that's really neat. That's really neat. Okay,
Yeah.
so marketing didn't take for you. Then what next?
So, I finished up at Cheney, and, I think I always loved acting. I always loved what I saw on television, but I had never practiced it. So my thought process was, when I went to Cheney, I was going to combine my love of visual art with theater. And so I went in as a design major, specifically to do scene and set design. But I had to take acting courses. And at Cheney, we only had like one teacher that taught the whole curriculum, right? Um, Picture my surprise when I found out that my theater teacher was Coretta Scott King's sister.
What? Wow.
So I was learning theater, and I also was, enveloped in the movement, because she was giving me inside information about the movement, and she was, connecting me to people in the movement, and all of that type of thing. So it it felt like a master's course in cultural anthropology.
Right.
But it was, it was a great experience. And then my love of acting took off from there. And after I graduated from Cheney, um, worked for a number of years for a number of small theaters within the city of Philadelphia. I worked for Bushfire Theater for a while, and then I transitioned from Bushfire and started working for a lighting company called McManus Enterprises.
Okay.
And so there, I was honing my skills, not only hanging and focusing light, but, now I was seeing how that affected my artwork,
Okay.
because when you're studying the art, light and shadow, and, all of that was in what we were doing. And so now I'm looking at all of these different types of lights, and how I can affect the way somebody perceives a thing based on this different type of lighting, right? Because now it's like they have what they call hard edge light, where it creates an ellipse, and, so on and so forth. And then you had these other lights that create, soften things. And so now I'm like, I can bring drama
Right.
to my art. And I was like, what? This is like kid in the candy store type thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So once you started to, which I think is really interesting to have like that set design, visual perspective, and then bringing that to the page. So as you started to develop and continue on, Did you write any of your own plays, or did you just act, or how did that how did you move forward with that?
Well, I think the evolution, was slow because like I said, I took the road to work in lighting before I actually started getting on stage, but that helped me as an actor because I knew how to find my light,
Okay.
right? And so every little instance that I was, working on, doing the sets, doing the lighting, stage managing, all of those things helped me for when I, finally went and got on stage. It was like almost a natural thing
Okay.
because I was like, I was the sum total of all of those things that I was doing.
Right.
Right. And then, I was acting for a while. And then around I want to say 2004,
Okay.
I started unlocking the writing.
Okay.
Like I had always been writing, like from the time that I think my eighth grade teacher was the one that really unlocked literary in terms of writing for me.
Mhm.
So I was always writing, but I was writing stuff that was private for me. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like I wasn't like, but 2004 was about the time that I was really experimenting with different forms of poetry and things like that, and all those types of nuances. And then in 2005, I think I put out my first spoken word CD,
Okay.
and it went rust, but that's fine. um and but I don't think it went rust because it was a bad project. I just didn't know what I was doing. I just was recording stuff, and I didn't know anything about recording. I didn't, I just knew that I had to get it out.
Right. What was at what point did you say to yourself, you know, I have something that I want to share with the world. Let me put it in a the CD, or and distribute it. Like, what made you, was there something that made you say, this is not just for an open mic, this is not just for the pages of my notebook, this is something I want to preserve?
I don't know when that point was, but one of the people who was probably most influential in getting that done is actually on this call now. um, and I know that he and I had many conversations, and I was sharing with him my work, and he he's a DJ, so all of a sudden it just became a thing where I would go over his house, and he would throw something on, and then I would say something, and then he would like, keep going. you know and then eventually, you know after that, that opened up a new area for me. So then I was home, and I was like, writing stuff, and I would just record myself saying it, and
Right.
then I said, well, I got enough material to make a CD, and so
Right.
I did.
So one night a DJ saved my life, right?
Yeah, for real. For real, for real.
So if you're just joining us, my name is Dr. Jewel with Jewel Books. I'm in conversation tonight with Andre Jones, author, illustrator, actor, playwright, amazing, amazing individual educator. Um, and so you started kind of putting these plays out, or putting your spoken word out.
Mm.
What was the kind of the next evolution to your journey?
Then it moved to, I want to fast forward to about 2009.
Okay.
And in 2009, I wrote, using some of the material from my first CD. I wrote my first play.
Okay.
And it was called Verbalized Ink. And it evolved around, I saw a through line between some of the poems, and it started out where it was just a two-person play where they were brothers and they were writing letters, and one was in jail and the other one was out. And the one that was out was inspired by the one that was in to use his literary gift.
Mhm.
And so he was in grad school and an English major. And so he would write and check on his brother, and then his brother would try his hand at writing something back. And, so you had this whole hip hop thing going on, right? Um, between the two brothers. And then when I wrote that, my wife read it and she said, "Babe, you got to finish this."
Mm.
And so from there, I developed three more characters.
Okay.
So I developed Pops, the father of the two brothers, um, the girlfriend of the brother that was out, and the prison, the CEO of the brother that was in. And so it ends up happening that the brother that was incarcerated became a literary influence on the CEO.
Okay.
And the love relationship between the brother that was out and his girlfriend becomes even stronger because she leaves to go to the Air Force. And so now he's writing letters to her as well as to his brother. And,
Okay.
so it was a cool experience, but that was my very first play,
Okay.
the first finished play.
Okay.
I had written, some other like one acts or, even like scenes, but that was like my first finished play.
Okay.
And we had performed it several times. And so then in 2010, I decided to go to grad school for playwriting.
Okay.
And then, I finished up in 2016, and another brother whom I met, who is here in the building, and I'm so glad he's in the building. Um, I met, he's an awesome actor. Um, as well as tap dancer, probably just dancer all around. Um, and he was originally in the original cast for Hamilton.
Okay.
And I met him at the debut of a play of a playwright who also went to Overbrook that I graduated with. um, and many people are familiar with Coleman Domingo. Um, Coleman had written he and another playwright, they collaborated and wrote a play about Nat King Cole.
Okay.
And this brother was in it and played Sammy Davis Jr. And I mean, he knocked it out the park. I mean, oh man, I can't say enough about that brother. And so, and from that relationship,
Mhm.
um, we were able to, stay in contact. And when I wrote my thesis play for grad school, I got an opportunity to put it out, to do a reading of it at the National Black Theater Harlem.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
I was able to contact my brother and he graciously played Malcolm.
Wow.
And it was an awesome night. It really was an awesome night. And now that play is a published play. So
Incredible.
yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So when you started, when you made the decision to write these books that we're going to talk about tonight,
Mm-hmm.
why did you, out of all of your experiences and your playwriting and all of your writing, why did you choose the medium of graphic novels?
Well, again, as I said, it was my first love.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think what happened was I was experimenting with all these other pieces of me that brought me back to my first love of, and I'm not saying my first love, like, that's replacing God, like God is like my first love, um, my first passion, the thing that I was first passionate about in terms of thinking about the world was graphic novels and comic books.
Right.
And and I had written a one-act play called M, and we had produced it at a small theater in Philadelphia, a small black box theater. And the reaction to it was really, really good. But we didn't know how we were going to move it to, continue to produce it. And then the thought process, I would say, in 2019 came, said, you know what, take M and make it a comic book, because in comic book form, you can expand what you couldn't do on stage,
Right.
right? Like there's a whole lot of story in between the story that you saw on stage. And so now I'm letting it breathe and
Okay.
bleed out, you
Okay.
know. And then I had these other characters, these, characters that had these powers. And I was like, well, in the comic books, I can create a world.
Right.
And so within that world, I can now open up possibility for supernatural stuff to happen, but still grounded in, a real experience, but now you have otherworldly things that can happen, other dimensions that can open, and so you give people the gift of being able to see the story,
Mhm.
but then also opening up their ability to dream.
Right. Right. I mean, I remember when I first got my hands on these and I'm sitting and I'm reading them and I'm saying to myself, I'm making notes. This is even before we talked about doing this conversation. I'm making notes because the 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 wording, the concepts that you develop throughout the story, and I've got some quotes that I'd like to share. It just hits you. You're reading and you're trying to take it all in, and it hits you. And I can, now that you're saying, okay, this was kind of a one act that breathed into this series, and then you added, you're able to add to it. I can feel that through the dialogue.
Mm,
Yeah, I
mm.
can definitely feel that through this dialogue. So some of the things that you discuss are the prison industrial complex. You talk about that. And I wonder, since you said that, you had this home library, you had this strong educational presence throughout your family. You had an opportunity to work with Coretta Scott King's sister and kind of be involved in the movement. How much of that is a part of the way that you write and the books that we're discussing?
All of it is. Um, there's a line in August Wilson's play Fences that Rose says to Corey. She tells him, she says, well, Corey, you can't be nobody but who you are. You know, what's coming out in these comic books is nothing but who I am. Like, you know, but I think the beauty of it coming out in the comic books is that each of the books shows you different dimensions of who I am,
Mhm. Right.
right? So, and if you have a, the way my grandmother used to say it is, if you have a deep well, why not share?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Just saying.
So can you give everyone kind of a framework of, don't, no spoilers, but kind of give everyone an overview of this series.
Okay, so the series is called M, and there's a lot of different reasons for why it's called M. But the story, as it's written in the comic book, is a little different from how we come at it in the play. Because in the play, we had to compress things so that we could get it into the 30 or 40 minutes that is on stage. So the summary of it is, in the middle of the comic book as well as the play, there is a detective whose superpower is that he solves murders by writing rhymes in the voice of the killers. And as he writes rhymes in the voices of the killers, he begins to discover clues that other detectives miss.
Right.
The way I've been able to tease all of this out in the comic book is to give you all of the grounding context for before you even meet the detective.
Right.
And then once you meet the detective, now the story all of a sudden really takes off.
Right.
But you do meet the detective at the very beginning of the whole thing. You're just not sure who he is.
Right. So one of my favorite quotes from, and this is from book 1, because there are how many books now?
Well, book 4 just dropped on Valentine's Day.
Okay. So, right? You said murder, a bubonic plague humanity, right? So talk to me about why you chose a detective, why you chose this kind of the storyline, and how you use that to then go further into, zombie consumerism. There are so many great quotes that you have. As I'm reading and I'm listening to these characters speak, as that could be a whole paper. That could be, that in and of itself is a book, zombie consumerism. So talk a little bit about the storyline, why you chose it, and why that is the kind of the best way to convey this message and everything that you're trying to get across.
Well, I was interested in telling a street story. And as I said, I'm a poet. I'm influenced by hip hop.
Right.
You know, and one of the things that, from the era that I grew up in with hip hop was we were thoroughly involved in questioning why things are the way that they are. We not only raised questions, but we also raised some awareness around some of the things that we needed to do as a community to kind of break the chains of the things that just be. Like some things just be.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And like I think it was Do the Right Thing, where there's the scene where you had the three older gentlemen on the street, and they're watching Radio Raheem get ready to go into the pizzeria, but then they have this argument because the one dude is talking about, he was dreaming of, some type of center, and the other one was talking about he dreamt about opening a supermarket, and then the third guy goes, "Well, when you gonna open your supermarket? When you gonna do so?" You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I'm saying that in parallel to how I, came up with the book, like all of those things that we hear and we see and we know and we talk about and whatnot, I wanted to put it in a medium that carried entertainment value,
Mhm.
but it also, very really started talking about those things and talking about them in a sense that was not us on the corner
Right,
arguing about it and not getting any closer to it.
right, right, right. It almost reads philosophically at times. The greater balance to time is choice. I feel like I could be in a university lecture, you know, and the professor would say that, and there would be a robust conversation about that, or time is both variable and constant, you know. So I very much appreciate that the way that you took time to let these words really marinate on the page and marry with the art. Um, so in the process of creating these, which came first? When you go to sit and do you write first, or did you, like, I know you conceptually you already had this kind of together, but from the illustration perspective, are you writing first? Are you creating the illustrations first, or?
it's it's actually evolved. Um, with the first book, I did all the illustrations and then went back and looked at the material in the play and then made the word bubbles
Mhm.
as I, went through it. The second book, I then wrote the story,
Okay.
um, but I just wrote a story and then I did the illustration.
Okay.
Then with the third book became an amalgamation where I said, well, yes, I'm going to write the story first. But when I wrote the story first, then I was like, well, creating these panels is like, doing camera angles.
Mhm.
So then, it went from just writing a story into almost like writing a television script, like where, I'm like, establish this, you know, um, the the interior of a library, you
Okay.
know, day, you know, worm's eye view, bird's eye view, mid range, close up, semi tight, all of those things, started becoming the way that I wrote it. And what I began to realize was, when I did that with book three, that really turned me on because when I did book three, doing the illustrations was somehow easier.
Okay.
And I think it was because I had game planned how you're supposed to see it.
Mhm.
So when I went to draw it, I didn't have to do a whole lot of, oh
Okay.
no, this ain't right. You know what I mean? Like, and so now here in book four, it that has been, because so it's evolved.
Okay. And let me go ahead. I actually have some of your panels. Let me share those. Um, everyone. Okay. All right. There we go. So I see some, like, it looks like what might have been sketching. So can you talk a little bit about this process? It looks like on the left panel there's some purples, and then on the right panel there's looks like some blue sketching. And how do you
Mhm.
think about the artistic part of this?
Okay, so on the left side, the purple paneling that you see is actually the smaller version of all the panels that actually obtain on the
Okay.
page. So what I normally do is I pick a size for each panel, and then I blow them up.
Okay.
And then I normally work in blue because the camera doesn't necessarily pick up blue when they go to print. So I work in blue, and then um, once the drawings are what I want them to be, then I use black ink and then render on top, and to get this lighting quality that you see, which is also based on my early days of hanging and focusing lights and understanding how light bounces and how it kind of plays into, like, you can have something that goes into shadow but it doesn't go into deep shadow, and then you know what I mean.
Right.
So that's how that works.
Yeah, and I can definitely see now that you explain like the emphasis that you had and the experiences that you had with lighting. I can see it now, and so it's as I'm looking at your art with fresh eyes, I can see the different influences. So can you talk about these two? Um,
These two pages.
yeah.
Sure. So as I said, there are characters that have powers in the book, and in the page on the left, you're looking at a character um, who goes by the name of Steel Pulse,
Okay.
and he literally is made 100% of angel dust, not the drug,
Right.
but but he was formerly a drug addict
Mhm.
who OD'd, and God sent back to earth as a being made completely of angel dust.
Right.
Um, and so he's a character that eventually is going to have his own book, but right now he's in the M series. Um, and so part of his journey is when he OD'd, he got separated from his sister.
Mhm.
So he's trying to come to her, but he doesn't know how to come to her because he looks different.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, and he's discovering all the different powers that he actually has. So that's what that page is all about. The page on the right um, is about the character, the forerunner character to the detective who was set up for a double murder.
Okay.
And this panel actually illustrates his escape.
Okay. Oh, I've heard some writers say when they're writing, I wanted to go in this direction, but the character wouldn't let me. Do you get that same sense that once you create a character, um, do they tend to, like, even if you have the story mapped out, as you're, getting to know the character, does the character then influence, the different in the story than you would maybe originally thought?
Absolutely. As a writer, I welcome those opportunities because characters have a way of showing you um, that your analytical mind cannot compare to what you can dream.
Mm.
And so characters kind of keep you honest that way, because you might map something out and you're in your mind, you're saying, yeah, I'm going to do this concretely, right? And then the characters say, no, 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 I want to go in this direction. I want this to happen to me,
Right.
right? And when and I have learned as an artist that the best way to find possibilities is to allow possibilities to speak to you,
Mhm.
as opposed to making, concrete decisions about a thing that your analytical mind actually makes the story stale.
Okay. Yeah.
The freshness is in the dream.
Wow. Everybody take
So
a minute to think about that. The freshness is in the dream.
fresh, 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 fresh. Yo, that's fresh. I mean, like
Right.
the freshness is in the dream. It's, like the closer you can be to the dream when you're executing,
Mhm.
the better things are going to be.
And that goes back to our off-camera conversation about, really finding that joy and that passion. And so that connects it perfectly, because why
Absolutely.
do people get stale? Because the freshness is in the dream. And if you're nowhere near the dream,
or like, when I was performing as Malcolm yesterday, and he talked about the coffee.
mhm,
He's like, coffee is best served black.
yeah,
But what do people do? They put cream in it, and the more they integrate cream into it, right? Now all of a sudden it goes from a substance that keeps you up to a substance that puts you to sleep.
right, right. Which is one of the questions that you ask in the first book. What if he wakes up? What if, what if this person, this who's not near the dream, who's not near that freshness, what if that person wakes up? So that again, I've pulled so many quotes because and it's so relevant. It's relevant now, it's relevant for a different conversation. So when you're writing something like this, what do you say to people who don't think that comics or graphic novels can be educational, can be relevant, can speak to greater social conversations? What do you say?
Read one.
Right.
Don't take my word for it. Read one. And then come back to me. And if you still have that same argument, then I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But chances are, if you read one, you will find, like, for example, the X-Men came out in 1963, 1 week after the March on Washington, right? And here you had these people at Marvel thinking about these superheroes, mutants,
Yeah.
these these characters that lived on the margins of society, right? So that whole concept was based on the idea of people who lived in the margins, who now had to figure out their human existence. And oh, by the way, when things went wrong, they actually saved the planet,
Right.
right? Well, who does that speak more to than Black folks,
Right.
people who are in the LGBTQ community, people who are Asian, or anything but white, right? All all of these people have been forced on the margins based on the colonizing idea.
Mhm.
And X-Men became like one of the biggest selling comic books for Marvel for the better part of like 20 years, because it was using the metaphor of mutants to talk about all kinds of stuff, political stuff, talking about just, basic, you know, uh, stuff in terms of um, abuse, stuff that talking about psychological trauma. All of those things were being discussed and voiced very beautifully. in a comic book.
Mhm. Wow. Great point there. Thanks for bringing that example out. And I think it's so relevant, especially when you hear young people who say they don't read, right? But they love comics. So you do read, but all of, whoever, the powers that be, society, whoever, is telling them that this is not real literature. It's not real reading. Um, so yeah, I think it's important to kind of shine the spotlight on that, but especially for authors and illustrators like yourself who have so much content in these books. This could be a whole lesson plan. One book could be a whole lesson plan.
Well,
um
the funny thing is, another person who is on this call, now these are three different people now. He and I are working together to go into the school system probably next year,
Amazing.
with the idea of teaching storytelling and comic book panel sequential art as a form of literacy.
Wow.
So, we're trying to we're looking to package that, because basically one of the things that we talked about was, for most children, the way that they learn to read is they're introduced to picture books.
Yeah.
And so they learn to associate the picture with these letter forms.
Mhm.
And, so you see a cat, and then they, do a job of putting CAT together. And after a while, they associate the picture of a cat with the word cat, and now they can read cat,
Right.
right? Then you go to the next page and it's, whatever other, thing, dog, or, candle, or whatever, and, that those pictures compound the interest that allows them to read.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I love that. As a former children's librarian, you're spot on, because they're activated at an early age at the visual storytelling of a picture book. Yeah. And so our time is winding down a little bit, and I have this last slide. So tell us, what are we looking at right here?
This is the cover of book 4.
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
and very proud to say that my son, who is a person of very few words, he finished reading it and he said, "Dad, it was really good." And he was like, "And the dynamics of your paneling like made me like read something and then go back and just, you know, read it again and then look at it again, because he was like, you're doing things dynamically with, your paneling." So for him to say all of that, I'm hitting on something.
Well, I'm
But
excited
yeah,
to get book
book
4 because
4, it's out. It's out on Amazon. If you want an autograph copy, you just hit me on my email and order it. It sells for $8.50. And like I said, you hit me on my email, I'll send you a signed copy. And if you want signed copies of back issues from 1 through 3, I can, do the same thing. Just send me your order and let me know what you want and how many you want, where you want them to go. I'll Shipping will be free. Don't worry about it. But you know, I, I'm writing what I'm writing, and I'm doing what I'm doing because I love my people.
yeah, yeah.
And I really want my people to have first right to refusal.
Mhm.
But if you refuse, don't be mad at me if I blow
Right.
up.
And I believe you will. I believe you will, because we talked about just when you are in and doing what and practicing and giving back to the world the gifts that were given to you. That's the only thing that's the next thing. It's
Do
been
what brings you joy, because
joy.
because it brings you joy, you will bring others joy.
Right. Exactly. So what else do you have coming up?
Well, there's, there's a few things. Working on a graphic novel um, soon to come out called Balance. Me and a friend of mine who's on this call are working on it, collaborating on that piece together. It's a 66-page book, somewhat of a thriller. So we're working on that. Um, I'm I'm in the middle of writing a novel as well, about an African Jewish family that was living in Nazi Germany.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm not sure, I'm in the middle of writing that, so I don't have any release dates for that or anything like that. In August, my partner and I are going to have our second annual Comic-Con at Artscape,
Yes.
August 6th and August 5th and 6th. And August 5th is during the Art Loop. So the Art Loop audience, as well as the comic audience will be invited in that night. And then on August 6th, we're doing cosplay day.
Okay.
And we have multi-artist prize packs for the best costume that
Wow.
will be given away on August 6th. So that's coming up. And then lastly, I will be appearing in the lobby at Delaware Theater Company for the next few weekends. They're premiering a show called Otherworld, which is, a musical about two girls who are playing a video game in the garage, and they all of a sudden get sucked into the video game.
Okay.
And so I've been asked to come and vend and do live art in the lobby during that. So that run is, the premiere of the show is tonight, but it's running through from tonight through March 20th.
Okay.
So you'll be able to catch me any weekend between now and March 20th there.
Okay.
You can
So
pick up books there.
so 2 words, booked and busy, right? Booked
Yeah.
and busy.
Hey, like I said, I think it was Quincy Jones that put it this way, like, whatever, do what you do, but whatever you do, be, because if you don't be, who do?
Mm. Well, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today.
Thank you for offering it.
Yeah, this has been great. I'm glad we got this recorded so you can share it, because I think so many young artists could hear your story. And can you give everyone your email? I had it up earlier, but can you give everyone your email address, how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. My email is A Jones, M as in Mary, F as in Frank, A as in Andre, 28 at gmail.com.
Awesome.
And reach out to me.
Wow, that's that's great. Again, my name is Dr. Jewel Books. You can catch me on Instagram, Jewel Books, and then website is jewelbooks.com. I specialize in promoting and advocating for Black authors, Black characters. And so most of the books that I have are Black, Indigenous, Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native American stories. So we have to do this again. Maybe when that novel comes out or the other graphic novel comes out, because I think what you're doing is so important, and it's important for other young people to see someone who is focused and leaning into their gift.
Oh, thank you. And you're invited to come down to the Comic-Con, you
Oh,
know, yeah, just come on down to the Comic-Con. Hopefully, we'll have, at least a sample of the graphic novel somewhere.
right. And shout out to Miss Connie at Artscape. Shout out to her for her amazing space, Artscape 1 and 2. Big love for her.
And I just want to shout out to my family that's in the building, brother L, brother D, brother D. I got two brother D's, but brother D Watts, my man, and my man, brother D Motion Bullock, and then my sisters, Tamika and Cynthia. I'm so glad that they're here, to share this moment with me. So,
well, thank you everyone for joining tonight. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, we've got to do this again.
yep.
All right, everyone. Have a good night.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.